The fourth item needing consideration today is consider approving the county administrator's ending current municipality contracts and exploring a request for proposal for animal shelter services, and authorize the county administrator to sign letters to municipalities. And we have Matt Lewis, our Justice Service Director, here to present. Good morning, Matt.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for allowing me to speak about this. Again, as you said, Matt Lewis, Justice Services Director, and I've made some notes I'm going to refer to just to make sure I'm very clear on some of the information that I want to present to not only to you, but to our public today. There's been a lot of attention given to this agenda item, and quite frankly, I'm encouraged about the interest in animal services here in Mesa County. I'm going to do an overview of what we're doing, what we're not doing. There's been some misinformation, the why behind this decision, what it could mean to our partners, when these changes might take place, and then what our next steps are going to be. First, I'll start with what we're doing. We are going to be splitting enforcement and shelter operations. Right now, they're combined under Mesa County Animal Services. We provide both of those services in some of Mesa County and some of our municipalities. We're going to be splitting those apart into an enforcement and shelter operations. The enforcement portion of that will go to the Sheriff's Office, and they will be taking over unincorporated Mesa County enforcement beginning in January of next year. This is simply a restructure. We'll be moving some of the FTEs, the employees that are currently at Animal Services, to the Sheriff's Office to fulfill that role for the Sheriff's Office. This will not affect the shelter services that we provide. This has nothing to do with shelter. Again, separating the two, enforcement and shelter. For shelter operations, we'll be working on a request for a proposal to see if there's a potential vendor that's interested in taking over running our shelter and providing these services in our community. It's important to understand that we'll continue to provide shelter services while we're working on the request for a proposal and during any position or period of transition that might occur when we select a vendor. If no responses are received, or if no acceptable responses are received, we will continue to provide the service ourselves. We recognize how much this community and our partners rely on these services, and will ensure that they can be provided at or above the level of service they're currently receiving in our community. What are we not doing? There's quite frankly been some harmful misinformation circulating since people became aware of this project. We are not closing the animal shelter, and I need to be very clear with that. Unless and until we have a new solution for those services identified. And if there's not one, we'll remain in this business and providing those services ourselves. We are not, contrary to what's been said, terminating all of our animal services employees today. I've personally met with each one of our employees and made them aware of the potential future opportunities with other organizations that may be looking for their experience and their expertise in this field. All of the employees are aware of the extended timeline and the uncertainty of being able to contract for shelter operations, and they know they have a job if they choose to remain employed at the Animal Services shelter. They're very well positioned to capitalize on any number of the opportunities that will likely come available to them in the future. Lastly, we are not pushing off a problem or making a budget-driven decision. For anyone that is not aware, this has been attempted in the past, a contract for services model for shelter operations. And last time in a nationwide search, there were 0 responses for that. I believe we are in a much different position today than we were at that time. We have an answer for providing the law enforcement portion of the services that Mesa County Animal Services currently provides. And at that time, we were experiencing significant facility issues that we no longer have issue with. This has been a decision driven by providing the best possible service to our residents and to our animals. This has not been something that has been driven by budget. Quite frankly, it may cost us more, and we don't know what the potential cost would be until we explore this process further. But this is truly about providing the best possible service. Next is why. Why are we doing this at all? And I will go through some of the things on the slide and explain what they mean. But truly, I wanted to speak to you just from my perspective. And this was truly born from feedback from our animal services employees about some of the things that have been struggles for animal services. And so looking at taking that feedback and how we might rectify some of the deficiencies that they've brought to my attention, this plan was hatched as to splitting these two services apart and, quite frankly, creating what I believe may be a more professional product through our law enforcement partners. So I've listed many of the identified reasons on this slide. I include some of my own observations as I've spent time working at the Animal Services Shelter. And I would submit to you that I believe myself uniquely suited to provide you some insight into this, having previously been the elected sheriff and now having responsibility for animal services. I absolutely, truly believe that our animal services officers will be safer. They will have better training. It will professionalize this service. And that is not to say that they are not doing a great job today, but there is more infrastructure created around our municipal and county law enforcement than there ever has been at animal services. It allows us to capitalize on some of the things that are already in place in those organizations. And I've put some of them on here: a records management system. I'm sorry for the abbreviations, but a single entry point of the Grand Junction Regional Communication Center, if they choose to use that for citizens to call, which our citizens are familiar with. Economies of scale. We have a very small operation. When we experience some of the constant churn and turnover, it is extremely impactful in our operation. We're dealing with a larger organization. Some of that isn't as immediately felt when employees might leave or be out for an extended period of time. There's a records management systems shared amongst all of our law enforcement partners currently, and they've got systems in place to communicate with our courts. So truthfully, looking through this and exploring this as a potential avenue and a potential solution for some of the problems we're facing, it simply makes sense. This is truthfully a service and business decision that we're making, hopefully, here today. I want to talk to you about the impact that we're going to feel on our partners. Other cities and towns will provide the enforcement services for their respective communities starting in January of 2025. Many already provide enforcement services for their residents. This will really impact to the greatest degree the city of Grand Junction, who currently contracts with Mesa County to provide enforcement services within the city limits. Our law enforcement agencies do similar work currently today. Our law enforcement agencies are citing under municipal code and under county code for various violations, and those processes exist. This will be something different for them in the sense that they are now enforcing animal services issues, but the systems and the processes currently exist for the work itself. It's important to understand, again, that we'll continue to provide the shelter services while working on a request for proposal and during any period of transition. I just can't stress that enough. When and if a new contractor is identified to run the shelter, our partner agencies will be given ample notice to engage that new provider or a different provider of their choice for shelter services at that time. It is not our intention to leave anyone hanging, nor to stop services prior to having a solution that we can offer. I want to walk through, this is just a very 30,000-foot timeline, and note that this timeline certainly is subject to change based on the board's direction, based on community response, or other things that may come up that change this. You'll see in June, which was last month, we notified all of our animal services staff of this potential transition. We're here today in July to speak about ending our current municipal contracts and engaging in new contracts for shelter services. In October, we want to release an RFP, a request for proposal, to see if there is any community interest in running our shelter operations. The hope that would be in January when the sheriff's office begins enforcement services, though we're also in the process of awarding whoever that contractor may be. And then we work on a transition period till June of next year to hammer out the details on the shelter contract and make sure that we position ourselves appropriately for those services. And then lastly, notice our partners and contracted shelter operations could begin as early as January of 2026. Again, all of this subject to change depending on direction that is given by the board or community input. With that, I am here today to respectfully ask the board to consider delegating the authority to our county administrator to sign letters to our municipalities, providing notice that current contracts will not be renewed. They currently expire December 31st of this year, and to direct staff to engage with municipalities if they choose in contracts for shelter services while pursuing a request for proposal for shelter services for unincorporated Mesa County. I'd be happy to answer any questions or if there's anything that I didn't cover that you guys would like me to.
Commissioners, do you have comments or questions at this time?
I think you covered everything. Great, very clear. Glad you're going this direction.
Thank you.
Correct. And I mean, this is a legal process. We have to give notice, but then now starts the kind of community process where we engage with our stakeholders in animal services, with our municipalities, where we try to make sure that there's no lapse in service and that our municipalities feel comfortable taking that service over in the future. But I think the thing we key on is even through this transition, there will never be a point where animal services or animal shelter are not provided at a very high professional level.
That's absolutely correct. Thank you.
Okay.
And you said the city of Grand Junction would be the biggest impact when it became to the enforcement issue. Can you tell us what the contract amount is that we currently have that the city of Grand Junction is paying for enforcement?
Yeah, roughly the contract value, and we have a contractual relationship for them for both shelter services and enforcement services. And I'm going to ballpark you, but it's roughly $500,000, $500,000 for that total contract. Those contracts certainly would change, and those values would change, probably going down. I won't say probably, they will go down because we would not be providing the enforcement services, rather just the shelter services for them for any future contracts until we can make a change.
So they would see a cost savings in that.
Absolutely.
Okay. And so moving into a new contract and negotiation, they would see some cost savings there.
100%. Yes.
Okay. And then can you tell me is there any flexibility in timeline when it comes to the city contract? Are we going to work with our partners to make sure that that coverage and that gap is sustained?
Yeah, 100%. This is changing every day. And quite frankly, since we've begun discussions about this timeline has adjusted and likely will adjust as we work through. There's going to be things that we have not anticipated. There are going to be the handoffs processes that need to be created. And again, going back to Commissioner Davis, the goal through all of this is to ensure that services remain provided during all of that transition time. And so I think it's important for everyone to note that this is our plan moving forward, but it is absolutely subject to change based on all of those conditions that might appear.
We can now move on to the public comment portion of this item. If you would like to come forward and state your name to the record, you'll have 3 minutes to present. Do we have any public comment on this item? Thank you. Come forward and state your name to the record.
Hi, I'm Nan Meeks. I'm president of Grand Rivers Humane Society for several years. Thank you for this opportunity, commissioners, and also I want to thank you for your interest in improving the lives of Mesa County homeless cats and dogs. Just for context, for over 10 years, I volunteered with Grand Rivers Humane Society and with Mesa County Animal Services. Both entities work very closely together. generally on a daily basis. 2 phone calls on Saturday, phone call on Sunday, 2 emails yesterday. After this, I go home and change clothes and go out there to volunteer on Tuesday. So we are in frequent collaboration. Also, for context, Grand Rivers Humane Society intakes cats and dogs from Mesa County that are in any condition, healthy, happy, cruelty, neglect cases, orthopedic surgeries, behavior issues. Yesterday, our puppy Sarah that we got last week from Mesa County had leg surgery. In the last 1.5 months, we've taken in 3 starvation dogs from the county shelter. We work like this on a very frequent, long-term basis. Last year, Grand Rivers Humane Society, who mostly takes almost all of our dogs and many cats from the county shelter, we adopted 621 animals, 350 dogs, almost all of them were from the county shelter, 271 cats, many from Mesa County Animal Services. So we're about to reach our 10,000th pet adopted. In a few months, we're going to be celebrating our 20th birthday anniversary, however you couch those. I just want to let you know clearly that Grand Rivers Humane Society fully supports any future efforts to improve the outcomes of our local homeless cats and dogs. That's what we were built on 20 years ago. That's the way we still operate. And looking forward to the future, that's our goal. So thank you.
Thank you, Nan. Nan, we really appreciate your partnership with Mesa County Animal Services. And it's really been a pleasure to work with Grand River. I'm on their Animal Services Board, the Mesa County Animal Services Board. And I've met with many of our constituents and many of your volunteers, and they speak so highly of your work. And you truly are a blessing to this community. And we just really are thankful for you. You're welcome. Anyone else have public comment? Please come forward and state your name to the record.
My name is Brady Capius. I'm a resident of Grand Junction and Mesa County. I'm also a volunteer with Grand Rivers Humane Society for the past 4 years. In that time, I've fostered over 40 dogs, all that came from Mesa County Animal Services. I second the support for this movement. I think there's room for positive change in the care of the homeless cats and dogs of Mesa County. I'd really like to bring up my concerns about budgeting for this positive change. MCAS's expenses well outweigh their revenue. And these numbers don't even take into account free care that other providers such as Grand Rivers bring in. We spend thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars each year for vet expenses, foster supplies, and advertising and adoption events. I would encourage the commissioners and the county leadership to consider that budget that will be provided to any future private entity moving forward. In order to make that positive change, funding is going to be a big part of that puzzle. I also have concerns about the timeline of the process, specifically on the law enforcement side. Only allowing 6 months for the municipalities to set up their own divisions seems very fast to hire and train animal enforcement officers. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else have public item or public comment on this item? Please come forward and state your name to the record.
Good morning. My name is Carol Peter. I am a resident of Grand Junction, and I live in one of those checkerboard neighborhoods where some of our streets are Grand Junction, some of them are Mesa County. And I'm speaking from real world experience, in terms of the enforcement aspect here. I'm concerned that we're about to cause a ton of public confusion as to who the contact point is for animal related issues. When walking in our neighborhood last year, we were attacked by an off-leash dog. My dog was attacked by an off-leash dog coming out of a yard. I only had one number that I knew to call. It was Animal Services. If I had to figure out, was I on a Mesa County street or was I on a Grand Junction street? I think we're setting the public up for a ton of confusion by canceling those enforcement contracts. That's my comment.
Thanks, Carol. Does anyone else have public comment on this item? Please come forward and state your name to the record.
My name is Carol Tawang. I'm the president and spay neuter coordinator for Grand Valley Pets Alive. And I think we need to give kudos to Doug Fry and his staff for the remarkable job they've been doing. I think it's since 2009 that no adoptable pets have been killed to make space. We, GBPA, do not have a shelter. We raise money to pay for spay and neuter. So we have worked closely with Doug on some of the grants he's gotten from Animal Assistance Foundation for vouchers to get spay and neuter done. We have worked with him to educate people. I take the calls and, oh, the pound is going to kill them. No, I spend a lot of time explaining what Mesa County Animal Services does. I would like to see the sheltering operation increased in their abilities to take in cats and handle other animals in need. Recently, I was on the enforcement end when a neighbor's dog bit me. So I had a wonderful deputy come to my house and take a report. They are overworked, and I would venture to say probably underpaid. But Doug has done a marvelous job, and I just want to see him and his staff continue to be able to provide all they have. And we who work with them, we know how important it is. There are several groups that I don't think have been able to be here today, but there's a lot of people in this community that care about the animals. We need to reduce the ones born on the street. It's a third year of a tsunami for kittens being born to feral cats. We need to get these things stopped. So we need to come up with a plan for the animals as well as for the people. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. Does anyone else from the public have comment on this item? Please come forward and state your name to the record.
I'm Mary Lane Johnson. I live in Palisade. I'm a local animal welfare advocate. I was also on the board at Research Humane Society on the previous privatization effort forward without success. I have a concern for whoever might be contracting on this. What happens to the court-ordered dogs? And if enforcement's going to the sheriff's office, they don't have facility for those animals. And then the staff is right back in the position that Animal Services is in now. My other comment is, I think all of us animal welfare advocates would certainly have preferred hearing about this publicly in advance instead of hearing about it from a blog and everyone emailing each other. So that is no transparency. And that's my comment. So, but I would like to hear from the sheriff about what's going to happen with those court-ordered animals. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else from the public have comment at this time? Does anyone else? Okay, we will close public comment portion and bring it back to Matt.
Yeah, if I could just address a couple of the comments, and some of this is speaking about things that may yet be undecided, but in the broadest strokes, one of the comments was about creating public confusion. And that has been forefront in our mind as we've talked about this. And right now, there's a single point of contact, which is Mesa County Animal Services. All of our law enforcement across Mesa County, regardless of where they are, what town, what municipality, or the county, all are serviced by the same regional communication center. And so there would remain a single point of entry for all of our citizens. They would not have to know where they are or who to call. They could simply utilize that if that's how our law enforcement chose to use that. And I would imagine we've already had some preliminary discussions about a very robust public education prior to making that change that would need to take place. The other comment I'd like to address briefly is court hold animals. That is true. Those do happen, and that procedure would simply not change. Although the enforcement would be done by a law enforcement agency, any of those animals that were ordered held would still be held by our shelter, would still be held the same way they are now today. And so that simply wouldn't change.
Great. Commissioners, do you have questions, comments?
Appreciate everybody engaging on this. Kind of see the passion from the community around animal services and animal shelter. And we get it. I do, Ms. Peter. It was mentioned the single point of entry, and that's important to us as well, because I agree with you. Even getting police services in this community sometimes as a checkerboard, but at least we know you just have to call 911 and they'll figure it out on their side. Same thing with animal service. That's the hope, is that there's a single point of entry, and that whoever's the responding agency, the appropriate agency, will respond to that. And sometimes both agencies respond, just to make sure that the community safety is up front. On the transparency piece, we really struggled with how to put this out to the community. Felt like if we just put it out to the community at large, our municipality partners, which we work hand in hand with, would be frustrated that they didn't get a heads up. And so we chose to give them a heads up, but you can't do anything without giving notice that you're going to give notice. So this was our giving notice that today we were going to give notice to the municipalities. So there's really no way to give every single group an upfront notice, because it's going to get passed around. So this is our attempt, good, bad, or indifferent to our attempt, to be open and honest with the community in what we're doing moving forward. And this is just the first domino. We have a lot of work. We're going to be flexible. We're going to make sure that service isn't diminished in the community, and hopefully in the end it's increased.
Yeah, I really don't have much to add to that. I think Matt answered most of the questions, and Commissioner Davis made the comments I would have, especially when it comes to who to call. This is going to be so much better. We've received complaints in the past that our call system didn't work well. People wouldn't get calls back in a timely manner, and that will be different now. It'll be part of central dispatch. I can't imagine the city of Grand Junction wouldn't want to have their enforcement calls run through there too. So it's actually more simple for folks. They don't have to know what the number is for animal services. And as far as transparency, we're here today. This is transparency. You saw the timeline. This is the very beginning of the timeline. There's lots of steps along the way. And there'll be lots of times for public to give further comment. But I think this has been very transparent.
Yeah. Yes, it is tough to post your public agenda. You want to give enough time for everybody to make it. And that's really what it's about. We want to post our public agenda, have conversations so people can engage in the public hearing process. And so we're here, we are accepting public comment, and this is just the beginning. And we're excited to work with our community to make this great place that we live even better, making sure that our animals are first, and really leveraging our community and nonprofits that already are doing amazing work, and seeing if there's innovation and space for them to take on a larger role. And it's been exceptional to get to work with Matt and our staff, and Doug is incredible, and he's so passionate, and what he's been able to accomplish is extraordinary. And I'm excited to see what innovation can take place if we create the space for that to happen. And if nothing happens out of it, then we'll keep doing what we're doing. And we really do appreciate the public comment and all the engagement. And we really truly are blessed to have a community that really loves animal services in the way that they do. So we're very grateful for that. All right, so we'll just move on to consideration for the vote. I'll entertain a motion to approve the item as entered into the record.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries.